Hi, my name is Diehold from the Diehold Foundation. This is Series 12 video, Part 2. And in Part 1, I went through and showed you who wrote most of Aristotle, namely the Piso family and Cicero. And so this is going to be a summary of what this is going to cover. And I'm going to try to keep this thing under an hour and a half. Did the Pisos use Aristotle's name to change the science? They needed a name in the past that didn't look like it was them who did it. They could maybe first append this thing to Stoic philosophy, and that was Cicero's idea. And then the Pisos had a totally different idea. Let's go create our new one. Anyway, why did the Pisos change the science philosophy? That was basically from the old idea, or the idea was out there that you can have the idea of a god or an object, and then you have the physical manifestation of it. And he wanted both together, that you could have a physical God. What was the other literary project the Pisos were working on? You're going to find out. What was the Calpurnius Piso's ultimate goal? It's all about power and taking over and controlling the Roman Empire. And in the video we'll explain why he felt he was entitled to it, which is going to be a surprise for you. Much of the information I'm giving you here is the level of a real scholar in Roman history. So at the level of cardinals and most bishops. How does what the Pisos did affect Islam? That makes you kind of curious. What is he talking about? Okay, this is the reference material, only some of it. Like I mentioned in the first video, I had complete access to the entire Loeb Classics online, complete text search and retrieval. 625 volumes of the Loeb's Classics, wonderful series. Journal of Roman Studies from 1936 to 2008, which I own. The works of Sir Ronald Syme. Many of the works of Bernard D. Green, my friend, who also wrote as Abelard Reichland as his pen name. And the research on the Temple of Vesta by my friend Barbara Rosenfeld, who keeps reminding me I should give her credit for the Temple of Vesta. So I did. These are some of the books that my friend Bernard Green did. The code system, you'll find that when they talk about Pythagoras, Pythagoras' code system is really several of Moses' code systems that I already taught you in an earlier series. This video puts together and tells you why the Pisos did the two literary projects. It's all about control, has nothing to do about religion. And you're going to find out why. You have to think in terms like that, of power. The literary projects is simply a tool by which the Pisos could accomplish their goal, which they did by 138. The moral lesson here is that a lie is a terrible thing that affects society for thousands of years. Old Testament Exodus, thou shalt not lie. And you'll see the consequences of it, because we, you and me and everybody else, is suffering because of their lie. They have caused this problem. When they altered Aristotle, they changed the science, the foundation philosophy that all our science is based on. That's who you blame. Here's the Roman Senate. Rome went through several periods. First, a kingdom, then a republic, and then the republic ended with Octavia, who later changed his name to Augustus Caesar. And the members of the Senate were the highest social, economic, and strata of the society. Below that is what they call the knights, the military, equestors they'd call them, equestrians. Anyway, that's what made up the Senate. This is where the power was until it became an empire. Then it went to a family. And it was all about controlling the empire through the family. Plutarch, now I think I mentioned in the other video, Plutarch is one of the pen names of Arius Calpurnius Piso. He took two words together, just like Moses had one of those code systems. A longer word is made up of shorter words. Pluto, the Greek god of earthly wealth was Pluto. Archos means higher exalted. So higher exalted god, Pluto. It's himself. So in his writings, Plutarch about Numa Pompilia was the second king of Rome. Something was about 600 and something, some 700 and something BCE. Nobody really knows. More like a mythological character, but we're going to assume he did exist. The statue here is dated on the side here, or marked on the side here, Numa. And it was probably done latter part of the 1st century. Anyway, furthermore, it is said that Numa built the temple of Vesta, where the perpetual fire was kept of a circular form, not in imitation of the shape of the earth, believing Vesta to be the earth, but of the entire universe, at the center of which the Pythagoreans place the element of fire and call it Vesta and unit. Now, the reason why he's saying Pythagoras and Pythagoreans, several other writers hint at it also. He's telling you there's a numbering system that was used. This is not numerology. This is a form of a copyright system where their names were equal to a number. And that was in Hebrew or Greek large numbering, Greek small numbering, a sequence system. Just like I taught you in Hebrew large numbering, small numbering, and sequence system. The Greeks used it and the Romans learned it from the Greeks. But that's what they're referring to here. By the way, Sir Ronald Syme evidently did not know about the numbering system. He knew about the emperors and important people had multiple names, and he figured out a lot of them, but he did not know that. Volume, page 334, the same book. After Numa had thus established and regulated the priestly orders, he built near the temple of Vesta the so-called Regina, or royal house, where he passed most of his time, performing sacred functions or teaching the priests or engaged in the quiet contemplation of divine things. Nobody knows that of Numa Pompilia. He's really talking about himself. Here's some old coins that predates the Pisos. This is an equestrian symbol, a man riding a galloping horse. It was the social class just below the senators. Here's a tracing of a metal coin of Numa. It doesn't look anything like this guy. Gives you an idea. This is really him. This is really Piso in his 50s or 60s. We'll address that a little later. Now, Rome had a lot of gods, and I'm going to go through some of them here, and you'll understand why. I'll do this as quickly as possible. By the way, the coinage doesn't lie. The coin of an emperor or something like that, and the temple that he supports or is in charge of is on the other side of the coin. Apollo was the sun god, but was also the god of music and arts, of prophecy, and the protector of the flocks and herds. Diana, the sister of Apollo, she was the moon goddess. Sol, the sun god. Jupiter, father of the gods, holding a thunderbolt in his right hand and a scepter in his left. Now you notice the other name was Jove. This is important. In Hebrew, bet with a dot in the middle, you can pronounce it as a V. So Jove becomes Job, like one of the books in the Hebrew scriptures. Luna, moon god. Mars is Eris. Now, Eris is the root name that Arius and Aria came from. Just like I mentioned, his father was Gaius, is from Gaia, earth, which is the word for earth. Anyway, our Eris is the god of war, and his Emperor Domitian with the god of war on the back of his coin. SC means it's a coin issued by the Senate. Vesta, the most honored god of the Roman Empire. She was the protector of Rome and family life. Here's Emperor Vespasian with the Temple of Vesta on the back of his coin. Here's another one of, I can't remember which emperor this time. Mercury, messenger of the gods, Neptune, I'm not going to go through all of them. But you get the idea. There's a lot of gods and goddesses. Here's a whole bunch. There was a total of 24 additional minor Roman gods. A total of 53 separate Roman gods. What they would do when Rome took over a culture, civilization, they would adopt some of their religious symbolism to incorporate everybody. They're something like the Borg from the Star Trek series. They absorbed everything they could to make the empire put together. But that's what they did. That was the whole purpose of these multiple gods. And each one of the major families was in charge of one of these gods and goddesses. That was their control mechanism, how they controlled the masses. But Rome had a problem. And when you read Cicero and several of the other writers and poets at the time, you realize what's happening. So, they conquered Judea, Jerusalem, in 63 BCE and became a vassal kingdom of Rome. They put the Herodians on as the head of it. And at the time, Seneca, who was a friend of Marcus and Gaius Calpurnius Piso, said in his writings that 10 to 50% of the Roman emperor had become Jews and adopted the Jewish religion because it made more sense than all that other nonsense of praying to moon gods, sun gods, things like that. It made a lot more sense. The problem for the Romans was none of the family could control them. They couldn't control the Jewish religion. So you're going to see what they're saying is happening. Seneca the Younger, Epistles. There's the volume and there's the page number. Oh, I should probably use my stick. People said I should use the stick. Precepts are commonly given as to how the gods should be worshipped. But let us forbid lamps to be lighted on the Sabbath, since the gods do not need light, neither do they take pleasure in soot. Let us forbid men to offer morning salutations and to throng the doors of temples. Jews light Friday night candles, and they go to the temple, some of them in the morning, and certainly on Friday night. He's complaining about that. Seneca was a tutor and confidant of Emperor Nero. He suggested in a letter to his friend Lucius, which is probably Lucullus, that lighted candles on Sabbath be prohibited. Augustine, this is much later, 200 and something, or 300 and something, City of God against the pagans. There's your volume, there's your page number. I give you all the references. You can go check it yourself. But when Seneca, speaking of the Jews, he says, meanwhile, the custom of this accursed race have gained such influence that they are now receiving throughout the world, that's the Roman world, the vanquished have given laws to their victors. Now you'll see different translations. Some said the conquered have given laws to the conqueror. But they're talking about the Jewish religion as it was spreading in the Roman Empire. So that was the problem they had. They had 54 pagan religions, and they have Judaism, and it was taking over the empire. And they saw what was going to eventually happen. So, I covered this already. Okay, one Roman solution was to change Stoicism to be more acceptable to the general public. That's why in Cicero say they're complaining about old school, new school of philosophy. And when you read Cicero and Seneca and some of the others, you can see to take the name of an ancient Greek and create a whole new philosophy around him. And that's what their idea was with Aristotle. As I showed and proved, all he was an admiral in Alexander the Great's navy. He's only mentioned once in one Greek. The other Greek that's mentioned in the same paragraph doesn't even mention him when he's writing. So Cicero was the first, I think, to wind up writing under the name Aristotle, but that's the reason why they took his name. After the assassination of Julius Caesar, what happened, Cicero and Cato were both involved, and so They both died the year later. So the library wound up going to Marcus Calpurnius Piso, Arius's grandfather, basically. And I think he wrote as an architect some of the chapters in Aristotle as with architecture and maybe also mathematics too. Then after he dies, it goes to Arius Calpurnius Piso. Now, it skipped over his father, Gaius, because Gaius ran into trouble with Nero, and you'll understand why in a few minutes. And so it went for sure, to Arius Calpurnius Piso. Arian Calpurnius, brother of Arian Calpurnius Piso, that's derived from Arius. This is actually his grandson. Was the brother of Emperor Antoninus Pius. That's him. That's Arian, him, not Antoninus Pius. He contributed to Aristotle. Then Claudius Gallienus, he was the guy who wrote so many books on medicine, brother of Marcus Aurelius. And then finally, that's him here, Gnaeus Domitian, Aeneas Oppianus. Sometimes they would replace the two R's for two N's. They've done this also with Aria's name also. And Eusebius was the last one. There's Eusebius. This, by the way, is at the Sistine Chapel in the big round building, a big round area, open area, and all the statues up above. He's one of them. He's there, up on top. Okay, partial family history. I showed this before. Gaius to Marcius. This is actually what they look like. Lucius is his uncle, or brother, but Arius is uncle, and then Gaius Calpurnius Piso. Now, from here down, you have to be a real scholar in Roman history to figure it out. You really have to know a lot and know the name substitutions they've used. So this is what we have. We have Valerius Paterculus. His sons were Emperor Vespasian was one of his sons. The other one was T. Flavius Sabinus, and that was one of his pen names here, and I'll go into it later. And his wife was Aria Senior of Vibidia. God, some of these Roman names are tongue twisters. Had two sons, a son and a daughter, another daughter. This is the older daughter, this is the much younger daughter. She, at the age of 7 years old, goes into the temple of Vesta. Think in terms of like a woman goes into the nunnery. They give her a brand new name and a new life. And she's married to the Roman Catholic Church. In those days, with Temple of Vesta, they were married to the city of Rome. There was just so many of them, I think 7 or 8 of them. And they came from the well-to-do and the rich families. And they would have to stay in the Temple of Vesta for 30 years and be virgins. And they'd check them. And if they lost their virginity, they would bury them alive. A little severe. So much for women's lib, you know what I mean? Anyway, she had several names. Aria Jr., Ariacina Flavia Sabina. Knows her father's Flavius Sabinus. And the reason is Flavius, he was related to the Flavian emperors and the Flavian family. So the feminine version of it is Flavia Sabina. Sabinus Sabina, the great-granddaughter of Herod the Great. So she is betrothed to Gaius Calpurnius Piso. In the year 37, she gets out. Now, remember I told you they changed the calendar in 525, a Bulgarian monk, and he backdates everything to roughly her birth date. So he goes back, because she's 7 years old, enters it, stays in the 30 years, she's out at 37. Unfortunately, about early part of 37, Germanus Gaius Caligula becomes emperor. So she's supposed to marry him. And something happened on the wedding night, you're about to find out. And he goes by several names. One of his pen names was Thracia Pietas. Now, sometimes they write it Pietas Thracia, but I'm used to calling it Thracia Pietas, so excuse me. After this marriage kind of ends, with 10 or so years, he marries the much younger Vibia Sabina, and he marries her under the pen name Thracia Pietas about 56 CE. They have a son called Pliny the Younger. He's very hard to figure out. He shows up as Sospes, S-O-S-P-E-S. Very hard to figure it out. It's like one of the code systems, A is equal to B, B is equals to C, therefore A is equal to C. That's how you have to figure him out. It's not easy. By the way, this is like my friend Bernie and Sir Ronald Syme spent a lifetime in this field of Roman history and to unravel what these people did and who did what and who wrote what. I have no intention of getting trapped in that. My goal is much bigger than that. Our problem is basically our sun, and in 26 years this thing might nova and we'll have the Ice Age. So it's much more critical. I'm giving you the best information about this subject that anyone's ever given. Okay, here's the cast of characters you have to worry about. Here's Aria Flavia Sabina. This is when she was in the Temple of Vesta. This is a unique hairstyle they had in the Temple of Vesta. It was like a hair crown they did. This knot above here means she was the head virgin. Try not to laugh too hard, please. But she is the head. This is a very good marble of Germanus Gaius Caligula. His father was Germanicus. And here's Gaius Calpurnius Piso. Doesn't look anything like any of these people. From this point on, it's a lot of pseudonyms and a lot of scholarship to figure it out. But people do. Okay, continue. This is now from the writings. Suetonius, as you'll find out, was Arius's. When I say Arius Calpurnius Piso, sometimes I'll just call him Piso. His grandson, through his adopted daughter Claudia Phoebe, was Antonius Pius. He writes as Suetonius. In other words, he's the emperor. He's writing as Suetonius. It's his grandson, and he's trying to tell the story of what happened to the family. He's emperor. Caligula became emperor from 37 to 41. So he became emperor just before they're supposed to get married. There's a reference here. And it's not easy to decide whether he acted more basely in contacting his marriages in annulling them or as a husband. At the marriage of Livia Orestia to Gaius Piso, he attended the ceremony himself, gave orders that the bride be taken to his own house, and within a few days divorced her. 2 years later, he banished her because of a suspicion that in the meantime she had gone back to her former husband. Okay, Olivia Orestia was really a position name. It's like in the Hoover Institute, you have the seat of Hoover, or somebody else that's paid for your seat. That's the case here. It is Aria. That's who this is here. And you'll see what I mean in a second. Diocasius, another kind of relative. He, Caligula, furthermore put away Selina's daughter and married Cornelia or Estilia, whom he had actually seized, again, changed the name, same last name, who he had actually seized during the marriage festival which she was celebrating with her betrothed, Gaius Calpurnius Piso. Before 2 months had elapsed, he banished them both, claiming that they were maintaining illicit relations with each other. He permitted Piso to take with him 10 slaves, and then, when he asked for more, allowed him to employ as many as he liked. Isn't that nice? You have as many slaves as you want. Isn't that lovely? Suetonius, again, that's the emperor, Antonius Pius, and there's the reference here. Thracia Peteus, Gaius Calpurnius Piso, and his wife Aria. See, he says the word Aria here. So he changed his name, Thracia Peteus, but kept her name, her real name. He was also for 10 years or so, let me explain. He's writing about the lives of a poet, Perseus. Perseus is most likely her father. Okay, favorite of Thracia Peteus that he sometimes even traveled abroad with him, and Peteus' wife Aria was a relative of his. So probably his father, her father, maybe a father or grandfather on the mother's side, who knows. Goes on further. Now the belief was that he met his Caligula death through the wills of Tiberius, aided and abetted by Gaius Piso. This man had been made a governor of Syria at that time, which is true. Gaius Piso was there. So let me explain that also. I mentioned in the other video. It's Gaius Piso. Gnaeus was really Arius' great-grandfather. He wasn't alive at this time. He was not alive. There's no way. This is a case where, I think I mentioned to you, in the Roman, they would write Gnaeus, or G, with a C and a lowercase and a period. What they were doing here, probably the church later, was the copy that they had of Suetonius, is they added an N and a period. In some places they actually removed the N and the period, which I showed you in the previous video. They're doing all of this to conceal their identities. They try to confuse people. So you wouldn't figure out what they actually did. Gaius Caligula was finally murdered in 41. Gaius C. Piso had some peace of life until Nero became emperor in 54. This is, in italics, is my stuff. It's not from the Lobes. The Loeb stuff I generally, if I always remember, I put quotes around it. Following, this is what happened. This is after Nero becomes emperor. Oh, he's a real sweetheart. There was in the capital a certain Pompeia Sabina. Remember her name? Was part Sabina. Pompeia, daughter of Titus Olius, though he had taken the name of her maternal grandfather, Pompeius Sabinus. Remember all these pseudonyms? It's to confuse the scholars so they can't really figure out who's who in the zoo. Suetonius, Lives of Caesar, Nero. Besides Octavia, he, Nero, later took two wives, Pompeia Sabina, that's our Aria, daughter of an ex-equestor, and privately married to a Roman knight, equestrian order. That's Gaius Calpurnius Piso. The emperor basically took his wife. Lovely. That's her when she was older, maybe in her 40s. Not even that, late 30s, early 40s. Suetonius, Lives of Caesar. Otto, that was 2 emperors after Nero. He didn't last too long, 3 months, and he was out the door or in a grave. Pompeia Sabina, who up to that time had been Nero's mistress, was separated from her husband and turned over for the time being to Otto. He's passing this woman around. Tacitus, Histories, page 25. He, Otho, had found favor in Nero's eyes by imitating his extravagance. Therefore, Nero had left with him, privy as he was to his debaucheries. I think what they're talking about here, between the lines, and when you have to read some of the books, you realize he was gay or bisexual, Nero, and he was having affairs with these guys. Anyway, Pompeia Sabina, the imperial mistress until he could get rid of his wife, Octavia. Lovely. Diocasius, a relative of the Pisos, a descendant actually. In Rome, Nero first divorced Octavia Augusta in an account of his concubine Sabina, her. And later he put her to death. He did this in spite of the opposition of Burrus, who endeavored to prevent him from divorcing her. And once he said to him, well, then give her back her dowry, by which he meant the sovereignty. This is all quotes from there. I just forgot to put the quote marks. By the way, they have this statue as the wife of an emperor who died at 117. Name will come to me in a few minutes. But it can't be. She was born in the year 0. She'd be over 100 years old, so it can't be. They also mislabel statues all the time. Again, to hide who these people really are. Diocletian, Roman history. It was to him that the emperor gave Sabina, a woman of Patrian family, in other words, an equestrian, after separating her from her husband, and they both enjoyed her together. Agrippina, therefore, feared that Nero would marry the woman, etc. Doesn't matter, but there's her name shows up, repeated again in Diocletian. Diocletian again, same volume. Sabina also perished at this time through an act of Nero, either accidentally or intentionally. He had leaped upon her with his feet while she was pregnant. The extremes of luxury and indulgence by this Sabina I will indicate in the briefest terms. Pretty brutal guy. Now you understand why he was involved in the attempted assassination of Emperor Nero. They hated each other's guts. Okay, so this is what happened. On her wedding night, when she became 37, let's say this is her in 37, she marries him, at least on paper. That night, he takes her to the palace, where he keeps her and uses her well for about 2 months, gets her pregnant, sends her back to poor Gaius Calpurnius Piso. Anyway, 9 months later, guess who's born? This guy is the same picture as this one. Now, I'll explain who these are. This is a young Arius Calpurnius Piso. You got that? You see what he looks like. The Romans did beautiful marble work, excellent work. Here's another one. Now, this is in the statue of Eris, the god of war, and it's in the Vatican. How do you like that? Pristine condition, never been damaged. Statue of Apollo, and signed by Apollonius. This is funny. This gives you an idea what a colossal ego Piso had. I'll explain. Remember, Apollo is the Greek god, so it's say God. And the last 4 letters of Apollonius, N-I-U-S, in Greek means son. So it means son of God. Now, Germanicus Gaius Caligula declared himself a god, none other than Jupiter. He decided he was going to be the top god. So he declared himself God, so he's the god. Now, her name is Aria, sometimes spelled with only one R, A-R-I-A. Now in Greek, large numbering, again, look at Moses' code systems, that's why you need it. And M was equal to 40 in Greek large numbering. The first letter of Piso, pi, is equal to 80. So 40 and 40 is equal to 80, or the first letter of Piso. So you have Aria, you put an M in the front and an M in the back, and you have Mariam. Gee, where have I heard that name before? Oh, yeah. Now you know who the father of the baby was. It wasn't God, it was Gaius Caligula. All the Marys in the New Testament are her, Aria. And the baby in the manger, Arius Calpurnius Piso. Doesn't he look lovely? He must have been a lovely baby in the manger, except it wasn't a manger in Judea. It was in a palace in Rome. Now, this is Apollo, statue of Apollo in the Vatican. See, they know who these people are. You don't, most of the people don't, but they do. They're very smart historians and scholars. Now, I've seen hundreds of busts of Roman generals, emperors, but none of them have this little thing on top of the head. You know what I mean? Now, the reason why it's there is because whoever sculpted this was told or knew about this. They're saying, this is Temple of Vesta, Temple of Vesta. They're connecting him with her. That's how they do it. See, you've got to be really smart and knowledgeable to figure what they've done out. But they do hide it in plain sight. I have to admit that for them. Okay, again, from here down, you have to be a real scholar in Roman history. That's why none of you know this stuff. But you're about to. Now, here's Arius Calpurnius Piso. His biological father is Caligula, but his father who raised him was Gaius Calpurnius Piso. They say he had 3 wives. I'm beginning to doubt it. They say second wife, but I think really it's probably a first. She had 2 sons with him. Alexander, who was named after Alexander the Great. By a sheer coincidence, Alexander the Great dies at 33 years old. Gee, I wonder who else dies in a book at 33 years old. Gee, I wonder. And the other son, surviving son, oldest, was Julius Calpurnius Piso. He had a son, Julius Severus. He adopts a daughter, Claudia Phoebe, the adopted daughter. I actually have a picture of her. I don't know if I put it in this thing. I go through her lineage in the next video, the next picture. Anyway, Julius Severus marries the daughter of Emperor Hadrian. Oh, that's right. It's Hadrian who supposedly married, that woman, and it's just not true. She'd be over 100 years old. Forget it. And they have a son, Sextus Julius Severus. So he borrowed his father's name and Severus. They do that all the time. And on this side, the second marriage, or third marriage, was Princess Bernice of Judea, a.k.a. Bonia Procilla. And again, you have to be a real scholar to figure this one out. Has 2 sons with her, Marcus Lucius Fabius Justus. I just usually call him Fabius Justus. And the younger one was Proculus, who wrote as Polycarp. Now, all of these guys had many, many more pen names. It's covered in the book that you'll see shortly. And one day I'll expand on it, but it's really unimportant for this discussion. Anyway, he has son Timothy and an older son. And Timothy, the ones in red are responsible for certain writings of certain books. And these are some of his pen names. And his stepson, Timothy's stepson, was Marcus Aurelius, became emperor in 161 to 180. So the Pisos were firmly in control of the Roman Empire after 138. Okay, now this is his adopted daughter. You'll see how famous she becomes. Her first husband is Cominius Rufus. He dies at 93, but they have 2 sons, Antonius Pius. These are some of his pen names. And Arian. Now, Antonius and Arian are all derived from Arius, so you can see the connection of the family tree. In fact, one of his names his full name is this, kind of long, Flavius, which means they were related to the Flavian emperors. Arius, Antonius, emperor, 138 to 161. Now, the reason that it's spelled Pius, P-I-U-S, is this. It's a disguised version of Piso. There's Piso. Now, remember, one of the Jewish codes were adjacent letter swaps, but what Moses did was adjacent in the alphabet, the sequence of the alphabet. He just took it adjacent as you were spelling the word. So he swapped the S and O to OS. Now, when you go from Greek, the O goes from Greek to Latin. In Latin, it becomes a U. So you have Pius. So he's really saying he's Antonius Piso. I know it gets complicated and strange, but you'll appreciate all of this. You'll have all your answers when I get done with this thing. Okay, Numa Pompilius, second king of Rome. As I said, he set up the Roman religions. Piso saw himself also as doing the same thing, but greater than ever before. He wrote his Plutarch, as I said. Here's a younger bust of, they called him Plutarch. It does look like him. By the way, he has a little bit of the bulbous nose, just like Gaius Caligula. Here's another bust that's been damaged somewhat, but you can see the similarities in the facial. And here's Numa Pompilia. It's the same face, same everything, same beard and stuff like that. Now, when Piso's writing his Plutarch, he mentions Numa Pompilia 79 times. This is more than any other Roman ever wrote about him. And probably he's creating the background of Numa Pompilia, how great and wonderful he is. Piso's writing it. No, I don't think anybody really knew. Apollo is mentioned 141 times because he sees himself as Apollo. I mean, who would have the goal to have a statue of Apollo? And it, by the way, in some of the writings you say, I showed there was a statue of Flavius Josephus put in the marketplace. Well, it's not of Josephus. That was one of his other pen names. No, it's of Apollo in the marketplace. And you'll see it in a few minutes. And he has the goal to sign it himself. That's Apollonius, which means son of God. Aristotle, he's mentioned 156 times. That's more than anybody, both Greek and Roman. It's because he's writing much of the philosophy part of Aristotle. He's setting up the foundation. This guy was really smart. Ares, the god of war, 42 times, more than any other Roman, more than any other Greek. Apollonius of Tyana, sometimes I think he's referring to his grandfather, Marcus Calpurnius Piso. Anyway, CN Piso, this is supposedly a coin of Numa Pompilia, sponsored by Gnaeus, the great-grandfather Piso. And the reason that the Pisos were claiming that Numa Pompilia had 5 sons, and one of them was a Calpurnian, and therefore they were related to them. Plutarch Lives, Apollo. He's writing about the Greek god Apollo, which is the sun god. The making of wooden images seems to be an ancient and early practice, if wood was the material of the first statue sent in honor of Apollo. He made the motion of crown Neapolitanism, the son of Antilles, and to set up a statue of him because he had promised to gilt the altar of Apollo in the marketplace in accordance with the gods. I told you, the statue of Apollo, gilt. Now explain why you'll see the word gold or gilt mentioned. Flavius means in Latin fine gold or gold. Yellow gold. I can't even pronounce that name. Said, Philip also has some remarks to make, Lapierus, about what has been said, for he himself thinks, as most people do, Apollo is not a different god, but is the same as the sun. Again, he saw himself as God. He's going to be God. Plutarch Lives, Ares, the god of war. Ares is lord of gold. Greece hath no fear. You could tell this guy had there is a monument that was about Apollo, and they found it. And this is the translation they have of this, and this is trying to fill in the places that they couldn't quite get or read. Apollo In his human form is the Greek god of the sun, light, healing, disease, justice, plagues, music, art, poetry, archery, reason, knowledge, truth, and prophecy. Gee, who was also the light of the world? Anyway, inscription, okay. This man, named after Apollo and shining forth from Diana, extinguished the errors of mankind. Who else also forgave man's sins? Of Diana, ... But in truth, heaven. This is the parts that we're missing. Okay, footnote. The missing words in lines 3 and 4 have been variously restored so that the epigram either says Apollonius was born in Diana but in fact was sent by heaven, or that he was buried at Diana but in fact dwells in heaven. It's not Apollo, it is Apollonius. This stone was about Apollonius, which of course means son of God. It means Piso. Apollonius of Diana. This is the full statue here of Apollonius of Diana, of Apollo, signed by Apollonius of Diana. And so, immediately amazed, he promised him an image, a statue, and a temple, and changed his mind for the better. It's not true. They made the statue. This I have both learned from men of standing and I have read in a book in the Ulpian library. I have believed in all the more because of the majesty of Apollonius, for that's again, they know it's Piso, son of God, for who among mortals was more holy, more venerable, more like the ancients, more like a god. He gave life back to the dead. Gee, who else did that? He both did and said many things that surpass human capability. Somebody else did that in the story also. And any more who wishes to learn about them should read the books written in Greek that have been written about his life. By the way, if all the main characters in the Old New Testament were in fact Jews, including Jesus, they'd be writing in Sumerian or Aramaic rather, or in Hebrew, not Greek. The Roman aristocracy wrote in Greek. Julian, Oration 6, uneducated cynics. Pythagoras also, and his school and his followers, down to Theophractus, is us because like a god as far as possible. Yes, Aristotle too. They're basically saying Aristotle wants us to be gods. This flat out says what Piso is doing. They really give very good clues here. You have to be smart enough to figure out what they're really saying between the lines. Now, here's back to our statue of Numa Pompeia. I found another one that was listed, statue of Numa Pompeia, but they changed the hairdo, and they have this little cleave in the middle of the beard, but it's the same face, same nose, same curved eyebrows, same narrow face. It's the same thing. This is a much more modern one, but was outside, so it's weathering. But they did have the cleavage here in the middle of the beard, but I don't know when this thing was done. It could have been 17th, 18th century. So, but this is first, second century. This is definitely first century. Here again, Numa Pompeia, but I found another one here. This is kind of interesting. I think I've seen this one before, and this one also definitely. Yeah, where did I see that? Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this guy, sitting on a throne with something around his head. How do you like that? Now, the New Testament, Jesus was supposed to be 33 years old when he died. The face of this Jesus on the throne is much older, a man of 50 or 60 years old. And you don't age after you die. You're dead. Oh yeah, here's where this monument or statuary is. St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican City. See, Pope Pius VIII had this thing commissioned. He'd certainly know. There's him. And we have Numa Pompeia, a.k.a. Arius Calpurnius Piso. enthroned, sitting next to St. Peter and Paul. Well, Peter was Proculus, and Paul is Fabius Justus, his two sons. The reason why Julius didn't quite make it, he turned the numbers game against the family after his brother screwed him out of his kids being emperor. Not kidding either. Horace was a Roman writer and poet at the time of Gaius Calpurnius Piso and Marcius Calpurnius Piso. And to make it short, he was contacted, epistle to the Pisos, a letter to the Pisos. This is the volume and the page number. And evidently the Pisos contacted him because they wanted to write a play. So these are a father and two sons of the Piso family. Has to be Marcus Calpurnius Piso. And there are many other records, blah, 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 goes on. Though the writer touches upon various kinds of poetry, yet as full 1/3 of the whole poem is concerned with the drama. It is plausible inference that at least one of the Pisos, presumably the elder son, that would be Lucius Calpurnius Piso, was about to write a play. Guess what that play was? Perhaps one with a Homeristic background and possibly conforming to the rules of Greek satiric drama. Thus, the special interest of Pisos may have determined Horace's choice of topics. I'll try to make this fast. Study the strange, eventful history of human life, and more note the characteristics of the several ages of man, so that different periods may not be confused. Events may be set forth in action, let's refer, blah, blah, blah. Latter method, however, must be used in the care of revolting and incredible incidents, like a crucifixion or trials, maybe. Play should have 5 parts. True authorship of the New Testament. The first book, Mark, had a total of 4 authors. The first one, the idea of the book Mark, was from Valerius Paterculus. His son, T. Flavius Sabinus, worked on it, did it between 40 and 50 CE. Historians refer to the earlier version of Mark as the Ur Marcus. And because his pen name was Furius Scribonius. Scribonius means a writer. Chop off the F and the last 3 letters, and you have Ur. That's where they got the Ur Marcus. Scribonius means writer, okay. The second version of Mark was done by Gaius or Lucius Calpurnius Piso. It's a toss-up. Maybe both had something to do with it, but I think Lucius obviously had something to do with it. Between 60 and 63 CE. The final version of Mark was done by Arius Calpurnius Piso, 75 to 80 CE. The book Mark is named after Marcius Calpurnius Piso, Arius's grandfather. So you didn't pull these names out of a hat. Okay. Back to the family tree here. Julius wrote NT, and the NT is John. Claudia Phoebe's son Arian wrote some of the chapters, books, and you'll see which ones. I have a whole list of them. Fabius Justus wrote as James. His son Timothy, well, guess why there's a book called Timothy. And Proclus, the younger son, is Simon Peter. By the way, Proclus is St. Peter's Basilica. It's named after him. Here we go. I'll get out of the way so those of you who wish to copy this down, you can enjoy it. It's in this book. Well, I think it was the second book I ever typeset. Anyway, Matthew, 70-75 by Arius Calpurnius Piso. Mark, final version. Piso gets done with it in 75 to 80. Luke, 80 to 85 to 90, Piso. John, Fabius Justus, his middle son, 105. Acts of the Epistles, it's kind of a range between 96 and 100. Piso with Fabius Justus, his son. chapters 18 to 28, Fabius Justus, and some of Pliny. Pliny was Arius Calpurnius Piso's half-brother, but genetically not related, obviously, but it's half-brother. Romans, Proculus Calpurnius Piso, the younger son. 1 Corinthians, Pliny the younger, half-brother. Galatians, Pliny the younger. Ephesians, Pliny the younger. 2 Corinthians, Fabius Justus. Philippians, Fabius Justus. Here's the years that they wrote them. Colossians, Fabius Justus with his son Timothy. 1 Timothy, Pliny the younger. 2 Timothy, Fabius Justus. 2nd and 3rd Thessalonians, 108 to 112. Fabius Justus with Timothy and his older son, Lucas Silvianus. These names are killing my tongue. Titus by Pliny the younger. Philemon, Fabius Justus and Timothy. James, Arius, Calpurnius Piso with the help of Fabius Justus. 2 Peter, Piso. 2 Peter, Piso. 1 John, Piso. Arian, 2nd and 3rd John is Arian, Calpurnius Piso. That's through his grandson through Claudia Phoebe. Judd, Arius Piso. Revelation, Julius Calpurnius Piso. 135, 136. Hebrews, Arian, his grandson. Now, how did the Jews wind up answering? After the Second Jewish Revolt, this was a war of literature between the Jews and the Romans. What they did was they played games with the numbering system on Psalms and Proverbs. And they used the number 12,068, which is proof at the time of the first century and the second century, they knew about that number. But there's no record that they knew what the number represented, 12,068. So, and I only figured it out because of what I explained in the Series 4 and the Series 1. So, what they did, now the agreed number of books in what they call the Old Testament was agreed between the surviving rabbis and the Pisos. And it came out to 24,136 chapters and verses, like I showed in Moses' 10 code systems. By renumbering some of the things, Torah's remained the same, 6,034, which is half 12,068. Joshua all the way through Psalms, even though all of Psalms was not written by Baruch, some were written in the 1st and 2nd century. But it totals 12,068, the number. There's no question about it. Anyone thinks this is a coincidence is beyond belief. I can't understand how anybody would even think that. It's so obvious then. The Jewish books that weren't so bad, or Jewish books, literally, Proverbs, Song of Songs, Ruth, Lamentations, Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, 2nd Chronicles, 3,017, which is a quarter of the number. And finally, the books that are Pisos and the worst parts dangle out here, not totally anything. That's how they separated them. Now, there's more books that the Pisos did that the rabbis couldn't do this kind of a stunt to separate them. And these are the books, and also the years that they were written. These books you can take your razor blade and cut them out of the Old Testament because they're not Jewish books, they're Roman books. Their purpose was obvious, to make a historical record and prophecy of the coming of Jesus. Daniel, by Piso and Fabius Justus in the 80s. Esther, first version of Esther, they did. Piso and Pliny the Younger. Ruth, Piso and Pliny the Younger. Jonah, Piso, Fabius Justus. Isaiah chapters 40 to 66. Piso, 26 chapters. I'll explain why. Scholars know From 44 on, it's Isaiah 2. They have Isaiah 1, Isaiah 2. So he added 26 chapters. Why did he add 26? Calpurnius Piso. Calpurnius spelled in Greek with a K. K is 20 in Greek, large numbering. And Piso, pi is the 16th letter. Well, I'm giving a large number. Sequence system he's using, sorry. The K is the 10th letter, and pi is the 16th letter, hence 26 letters, 26. That's why he added 26 chapters. Why does it end at 66? Because Flavius Josephus, Flavius is 30, and Josippos is 36 in Greek small numbering. Totally, 66. That's why. He puts his signatures on things. First Chronicles, Arius, Calpurnius, Piso. Ignore it. Enoch, Piso, Fabius Justus, and Arian. Malachi, Fabius Justus, Arian, and Antonius, his brother. That's the emperor. Ecclesiastes, Piso. That's his confessional. Vanity of vanities. Everything I see is vanity. It's true. He was confessing there. Ezekiel, chapters 14. Only there. This is it. Thought those three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it. They should deliver but their own souls by their righteousness. The reason he put it in there is because he had to show these two existed before he existed. In the past, they're real people. They're there. Somebody mentions them. There's one interesting thing about this. Baruch is the one who was the grandson of Jeremiah. He's the one who wrote as Ezekiel. He also wrote as Joel. I strongly believe Obadiah and much of Psalms, but not all of Psalms. Anyway, when he was in Babylon, they did the entire book Ezekiel in stone granite and raised the letters. That's difficult, the Hebrew letters. The one place where that Ezekiel is chiseled out is chapter 14. Nothing else got chopped out because what was on that stone tablet originally is not this crap. This is to heristicize Daniel and Job. Remember, Job was another way to say Jupiter. Anyway, Zechariah, Piso, that's it. There's several numbering systems used. Greek large numbering, small numbering sequence systems. In Greek, it's called itsopsipha. And Plutarch mentions names and numbers game after dinner. Common unlettered people, and this is where the reference is. He's telling you there is a numbering system with the letters, and that's how you figure out who they are. Josephus, again, that's him, that's Piso, against Apollonius himself. In this fashion, he also wrote to Apollonius, the district governor in the 146th year. This is a footnote right from Loeb Classic. The 100 has been inadvertently omitted from the manuscript on the 18th of the month of whatever. So why did he take the 100 out and he left 46? Because Jesus is 22 in Greek small numbering, and Christos is 24, totaling 46. That's why. It was done deliberately. By the way, when you read through Aristotle, in some places, it's loaded with inner circle numbers too. Diogenes Laertes, lives of eminent philosophers. Okay. For Aristotle lived to be 63, and he was 17 when he became Plato's pupil. We know this is not true. Nobody knows how old this guy was. Nobody even writes about this admiral in Alexander the Great's navy. Plutarch is the one who's writing this stuff, or his relatives. Why did he do this? 63 minus 17 is 46. Again, it's who? It's none other than Piso saying he did Jesus Christ. Revelation. Julius Calpurnius Piso. He makes Satan. Everybody's looking for Satan. 666. First letter of Christos, chi, in large numbering is equal to 600. The numerical total of Greek and small numbering of Flavius is 30 and Iosipos is 36, total is 66. Put it together at 666. In Greek manuscripts, it's 616. Why? Because the 16th letter of the Greek alphabet is pi, first letter of Piso. The reason why Julius Calpurnius Piso turned the numbers game against the family. He also did with Pliny the Younger, with 27, and the 144,000 supposed to live. The reason 144 is K in Greek large number is 20, pi is 80, that's 100. Fabius Justus in Greek small numbering is 44. Therefore, there's your 144. In truth, he was the only brother that survived. Proculus died years before in an attempt to revolt against somebody, I think the emperor. So he got whacked. So Fabius Justus was the only one left. So that's why Julius says 144 is going to be the survivors. It was true. By the way, all the Pisos, I didn't have the time, because I'm running long here, to show you. All the church fathers for the first 300 some odd years were all the Pisos or the Ulpians related to the Pisos through Trajan. Anyway, it has matter. It has matter in the sense. Okay, this is why they did Aristotle. Again, I mentioned it earlier. And it says it has matter in the sense that it is, though as if a double, but both form and matter are one nature, just as Aristotle too says. In other words, they want where you have the idea of God and there can't be a manifestation of God. He wants both together. He has to for his hero, Jesus, which, oh, by the way, the name Jesus comes from the Greek translation of the word Joshua. And Joshua's father was Nun, spelled N-U-N. And she, the name of a Catholic sister is Nun also. Now, when Piso first did the story of Esther, he hangs Haman, which is himself, on a scaffold or a cross 60 cubits high, because it's Calpurnius Piso in Greek small numbering. The Jews redo it and hang him 50 cubits high, because that's Nun in Hebrew, large numbering, N is equal to 50. So they're kidding. Yeah, we know where you got the name Jesus from. Anyway, I'll go on further like this. For this twofold contending nature of soul and body combined into one. Again, the Jesus stuff. God can come down and say hello to you. Now, found this. This is a monument plaque. It was on a wall. It's carved marble. And it was probably after Julius, either done by Arian or one of the relatives had it done, or Antonius Pius. This is what's incorporated in this thing. This is one of Piso's many pseudonyms, Marcus Antonius. If you notice, his son Antonius Pius used it, aka Aristotle. Piso, one of his many pseudonyms, and that's him right here. You see the same faces of Numa Pompilia they used? Same one. 2, Archangel Michael. There, trumpeting the coming of the Messiah, Piso. Archangel Gabriel, guiding Piso on his journey. His mother, Aria Flavia Sabina, with the special, I got hair drawing wrong, sorry, design of the Temple of Vesta. There she is. Temple of Vesta in the background. Also the images of Temple of Vesta right here too, by the way. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, driving his chariot to conquest, war, famine, and death. There they are. He's driving them. How the Arabs are affected through Islam, by what the Pisos did. A friend did this book, about 15 years ago. Islam, its Quran, Hadith, and its leadership. By the 6th century, Christianity had made inroads into the Arabian Peninsula. The Jews of the Arabian Peninsula, they weren't interested in converting Arabs at all. They were business people. They owned date groves and vineyards and other businesses, and that's what they were interested in. But Christianity was spreading. So there was a family in the desert called the Quraysh family of the Arabian Peninsula, and they wanted to somehow stop the spread of Christianity. But unfortunately, they were illiterate. They were illiterate Span people, and it's in the Quran, you'll see in a second. So they kidnapped a Jewish rabbi from Yemen. His name is encoded in the Talmud, and the Talmud tells the story, written about the same time as this happened, about 600 and something, and an Armenian monk, and forced them to write the Quran. After they were done, they murdered them both. Hence we get dead men tell no tales. So here we go. Right from the Quran, these are the chapters from the Quran. Chapter 297 say, whoever is an enemy of Gabriel, it is he who has brought the Quran down upon your heart, O Muhammad. My permission of Allah, confirming which was before it, and as guidance and good tidings for the believers. Verse 98, whoever is an enemy of Allah and his angels and his messenger and Gabriel and Michael, then indeed Allah is an enemy to the disbelievers. 99, and we have certainly revealed to you verse which are clear proof, and no one would deny them except the defiant disobedient. Chapter 940, if you do not aid the prophet, Allah has already aided him when those who disbelieved had driven him out of Makkah, I guess that's Mecca, as one of two, when they were in the cave. Now, this stuff was dictated in a cave to Muhammad. And he said to his companion, do not grieve, indeed Allah is with us. Chapter 12:2, indeed we have sent it down as an Arabic Quran that you might understand. There are more than 50 plus angels claiming to do things that you just can't really say. But here's a little sampling. And we certainly sent Moses with our signs, bringing our people from the darkness, blah, blah. It was God who sent Moses to Egypt to free the people, not Archangel Gabriel and Michael. All the we's throughout the entire Quran are Archangel Gabriel and Michael. That's all the we's. Chapter 21, 16 through 17. And we did not create the heaven and earth, and that between them in play. There was a saying they did. They didn't create it because it was a joke, as we did intend to make a division. Okay. He's saying in the Quran that we, Archangel Gabriel and Michael, created the heaven and the earth. I thought God did that, didn't you? Chapter 23, 49, we bestowed the book upon Moses, the scriptures. Well, I can certainly disagree with that one, since he got those 2 tablets out of the cave, and they were already written down, but he had to create a surface story, and probably God helped him a lot with the surface story. But there's no way Archangel Gabriel and Michael were even mentioned. In fact, Archangel Gabriel and Michael isn't mentioned in the Torah at all. In fact, I don't think in any of the books that the Jews actually wrote. Chapter 50, 38. We did certainly create the heavens and the earth. Gee, I didn't think that was possible. I thought God did. 50, 43. Indeed, we give life and cause death. Gee, there's somebody in a story that does that, but I think God does that. The Quran text is preceded by 3 Arabic letters, Alif, Lam, Min, A-L-M. The 3 letters reappear at the end of the Quran and before each chapter. The Hebrew letters Aleph, Lamed, Mim. These letters were inserted by the rabbi because they are the first letters of the Hebrew words Ein lo mamish. He has no truth or has no substance. What he's saying, it's a whole lie. I guess that's, by the way, I'm going to say something, add something here. It took the Quraysh family about 100 to 150 years before they had scholars that could read Hebrew and Greek to realize how badly this monk and rabbi screwed them up. They have no less than 10 of Piso's fictional characters in the Quran. The worst two I'm about to tell you. Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Michael are both fictional characters created by Arius Calpurnius Piso, and this is when he created them. In Daniel, these are the chapters, year 85. Luke, these are the chapters, 85 to 90. Enoch, which didn't quite make the Old Testament, 103 to 104. Archangel Michael, Daniel, 85. 1 Thessalonians, 108. Jude, 115. Revelation, 135, 136. Both fictional characters. So I'll reiterate. You have two fictional characters created by Arius Calpurnius Piso, dictating a fictional book to an illiterate man in a cave. What could possibly go wrong? Anyway, I think you've got enough. You now know the whole bitter truth. What happened? It now explains 2,000 years of history, and for the Muslims, 1,400 years of history, and why people we have put on pedestals don't belong there at all. It was all about power and greed and money, and they use these stories to control people. That's not to say there isn't a God. I may be the first one in history ever to scientifically prove there is a God, but it certainly isn't the characters that were created here. For the Muslims, don't get mad at me. You get mad at the Quraysh family who did this to you. The worst part of the story is in one of the chapters where Muhammad marries all of his cousins, on both sides of the family. So he's marrying little girls and he's marrying older women, and for some reason the Muslim world thought it was okay to marry first and second cousins. But when you do that over a long period of time, you damage your DNA, that you wind up with something called bipolarism and many diseases, endocrine diseases and stuff like that, that you'd have to go to a Merck manual to actually see how many diseases you have. But it's not a pretty picture. They've damaged you the most. And of course, the Christian history with the Jews has been terrible. It had been reported that the Nazi guards in Dachau and Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen both sent weekly reports to the local bishop or cardinal of how many Jews they murdered that week. They're not blameless. And why? Because they know in the Jewish literature, they knew who created the New Testament and also the Quran too. The thing you should both pay attention to is this. One, the Pisos changed the science, and that is why your science has failed miserably of figuring out what causes the Ice Age and polar reversal. It took somebody like myself outside the field as a hobby to figure it out. And you have, it looks like only 26 years left before this event happens. I don't know how you're going to deal with it. But somehow you're going to have to force your governments to do something to prepare for this event. That's why you have the global warming. It has nothing to do with mankind. It's our sun's output is increasing and it's going to get worse and worse before this event. You have so little time, I don't know what to say. I did my best 43 years ago when I first wrote Reality Revealed. I was right then. Like I said, the CIA called me up and told me I was right. The question is I haven't been able to really get government to do anything that would meaningfully save any number of people, unless they're trying to save themselves with tunnels, which is an incredibly bad idea. Anyway, that's enough for me talking. I hope you'll learn something from this. The Diehold Foundation is a science foundation, but this is kind of related to science because of this religion, it changed the science. We take contributions that are tax deductible, and greatly appreciate any contributions you do make towards the continuation of this work and publishing of additional books on the Ice Age and Polyversal. Thank you.